Hello and welcome to this week's Old School RuneScape Q&A. I'm your host Mod Sween. I'm joined on the sofa currently by Mod Oasis.
Hello.
And Mod Gambit.
Hello.
For your last ever Old School RuneScape
Yeah, it is. This is the one. What's the opposite of a debut? A finale, I guess. Bowing out.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, I'll give you a grilling on the stream later on. We're going to talk about your finest moments here.
Oh no. Okay.
We've also got Mod Husky and West in the room. They're on the PCs at the moment. They'll be joining us on the sofa later on. And a big thanks to Mod Tide and Mod John. And somebody else new, I'm afraid I don't know your mod name. Mod Spear, thank you very much for helping. All right, I'll begin with the usual announcements and then we'll go into a bit of a playthrough for you and then we've got some the questions and answers. An update on high scores. There isn't really much of an update, I'm afraid, so there's still no new development from last week. We tried a few different things to fix it. They didn't quite work, so we're going to try more fixes. We do know it's a pain. It affects things like clan competitions and tracking EHP. It's the result of some really old tech that we're using. A few of you said we should just undo the changes, but we don't know if that would work. It wasn't designed to be removed from, just added to, which caused the issues we're facing. So we are trying to fix it. PvP. So we've actually made some good progress with the overall vision of what we want PvP to be. There's an alignment internally about how we're going to proceed. We reached out to a group of about 20 to 30 players. They've given us their feedback and we're addressing it. Once that's done, we'll expand that group to a larger number of players. Again, we'll take some more feedback and we'll address those points. And once we've done that and built a content roadmap, we'll be in a position to share it to the wider community. One thing we're going to do when we're in that final position to share the roadmap to you is share each iteration of our vision plus all the feedback we've got at the various stages and then what we decided to do as a result of the feedback. Because I think it's important for you to find that you're represented with the people we choose to give feedback and the action we take, whether we choose to address it, ignore it and so on. What's next? Death mechanics. So an in-game poll is now live. This poll is aimed to capture your opinion on how we should proceed with the death mechanics. We'll use the results to inform whatever action we decided to take. And a reminder, you don't need to visit poll booths. You can open the account management menu, click the community tab and vote from there. !death in the chat to see the updated blog with a lot of changes from when it was first published. Working our way through the announcements still. So we've added a new way for you to submit your questions for future Q&As. Hit !questions to send us your questions in question form. We've got some new merch to celebrate Old School's birthday, which was on Saturday, 22nd February. Thank you very much for joining us on the stream last Friday. And if you missed the stream, you can find all the segments on YouTube now. !merch to be taken to the store and to see Angelscape's new Tim and Crunchy pin, which I believe Mod Oasis is going to model delightfully for you.
Ooh. You can't really see it very well, but it looks fantastic.
Thank you, Zoom. Whoa.
Ooh.
So that's !merch to be taken to the merch page, and I think you can sign up for a pre-order for this limited edition pin.
It's quite a nice pin. It's very big, that one. And lots of details in there. I think I saw Angelscape's tweeting about it, saying there's 17 hidden references on the pin, if you can find them all.
Yeah, we covered 14, 15 of them on the stream on Friday.
Ah, okay.
And we left the last few for players to find themselves or for Angelscape to share herself. Two more announcements you'll be pleased to know. We're publishing a new monthly blog, !Gazette, 1Z, 2 T's, to see February's edition. And we're aiming to release March's edition in the middle of March. And finally, we are gearing up for the next big content update, !Dark Mire, to learn about what we're going to be polling. And to talk you through that a bit more, we've got a showcase of the Hallowed Sepulchre by Mods Husky and Mod West. So I think we'll shoot over to the PCs now, if that's okay.
Hello. Hey. So we're going to give you guys an overview of what the Hallowed Sepulchre is and show you guys essentially like 2 and a bit weeks of dev work on it, grey boxing, that sort of stuff, and explain what we're doing. So first of all, why are we introducing some new agility content is probably the first question. The biggest one is that we want to have a more interactive way to train agility. Every single course is effectively the same, even the Prif one, which was supposed to be different. You click on these obstacles to navigate them, and you do it repeatedly until you gain levels. So the concept for this is that it is very interactive and very sort of risk-reward. So I've got on here for my notes, it's interactive agility. It is essentially, the initial pitch was Rogue's Den meets Pyramid Plunder, but with actual traps. instead of the stuff in Rogue's Den. The activities will punish you by removing time left on the clock, which you'll see in there, instead of damaging you. The goal is to get through as fast as possible. And as far as XP per hour, it's probably going to be slightly better than Rooftops if you can do it flawlessly. And there is an element of loot versus reward. There are going to be various treasure opportunities which we'll go over throughout it, where naturally, if you're going to go and search a chest or overcome a skilling challenge to get there, it's going to cost time on your clock, which relates to losing agility XP. There's also going to be the idea of gambling your loot in the element that, say you get to floor 3 and you know you've got 2 minutes left. If you decide to take on floor 4 and don't manage it, you get nothing for your time. So you've got to make that element of choice, like, do I cop out in floor 3 or do I continue through? So I think that should be a lot of fun. First of all, though, before we get into it, talk about the definition of Hallowed Sepulchre. So we prelude into this concept art. So you can see on there we've got this sort of Siren colours and that. So hallowed, not like Halloween being scary, but more like hallowed is to be made holy, like it's kind of like consecrated. So this is sort of a holy place. And a sepulchre is a small room or monument cut in rock or built of stone in which a dead person is laid or buried. Thank you, Google. So that's the idea of that. So you've got this sort of holy crypt in Darkmere that the vampires cannot get access to, right? It's holy ground, and you are going in and raiding this loot inside the sepulchre. So this is a concept art, which after going over and talking to people about what this was made by, is it Mod
Neil?
Mod Neil.
Yeah.
He made this, sort of looking at a lot of the symbols from Sarah Domain, sort of lions and...
a lot of the symbology we have in the game already, like God Wars, the whole Zilliana and all of her crew as well.
Yeah, because for those of you who don't know, lore-wise, this whole area of Darkmere before the vampires came was Icene territory, right?
Yeah, it was Hallowed.
The same people as Zilliana. Moving on to the next slide. There we go. He also drew us up an example of like props, so like various like urns, coffins, the sort of archways and color scheme. You sort of see the blues, golds, whites there, and this has been useful for
incredibly useful.
Mod West here to say what pieces do I need to make so we can map them down in game.
Yeah, and as you progress through the level, it will sort of go from really old and sort of it's been like pillaged by quite a few raiders, and as it gets further down, it get more elaborate and a lot more gold, and yeah, just it looks fancy as you get further down, as less people have got that far, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the layout, there's going to be 5 floors to this. We published in the blog. It starts off at 52 agility for the first floor, going up in increments of 10, so 62, 72, 82, and finally 92 agility to get to the final floor. So when we were talking about this, we had very different visions of what this could look like, just sort of picture it in our heads. And eventually, West came up with this drawing, which I think they said picture speaks 1,000 words, but it kind of shows very well sort of what we're going for, right? You enter on Darkmere into a lobby area. You come from the outside to this central structure, and you work your way through the different floors until you get to the bottom of this structure, which is still on level 4. You enter the final one into this sort of flooded, holy tomb at the bottom.
That's where the builder, put himself in the most prestigious place, right?
Yeah, and you can see that there's treasure sort of dotted about as you go down, and then finally there's this sort of more important part of the Sepulcher where this some very important priest of time has gone past is gone. But you guys probably don't want to see all this. You guys want to see content. So if we hop over to the game world. This is the picture that was in the blog of the entrance, so you can see that this entrance to the Sepulcher, and because it's not down, if I had it pre-typed, but if I just go into the lobby.
Got a lot of pogs. Thanks.
You guys can see this. So there's a lot of, again, this is all sort of work in progress. When we talk about dev work, we end up doing just sort of grey box assets, so you can sort of see this here with what the statue could look like and where they would be placed. So you see there's like models of Zilliana sort of over here, and then like various Justiciar statues here.
Spot around. So here the floor is mostly done, but the walls are still sort of in development, so it's still fairly grey box.
Yeah. So that's the lobby area. You enter into the Sepulcher. Again, this is all sort of still in development, but I'm going to show you guys what it looks like inside it, or what we've got so far. So before we go into this, I should probably mention what greyboxing is for those of you who don't know. Greyboxing is where we just come up with sort of temporary assets that are roughly what we're going for with very little detail so that developers can plot out paths. Yeah. And then we can work on implementing the content while you guys, the artists, work on fleshing out all these models and animations and stuff.
Yeah, so we can work at the same time on the same thing without getting each other's way, essentially.
Yeah. And you'll notice that this looks very much like hallways as we go through. This is what I would sort of refer like critical paths. So this is not going to, if you think back to the previous image, it didn't look like corridors, it looked like one big temple. This is the idea that like I will work and focus on these main paths and plotting down the traps. Yeah, you guys are seeing spoilers for stuff we're going to laugh a bit later. And then essentially you can imagine that this might just be an open floor with like various pillars and stuff in the way that the artist can flesh out. So moving on to this, so I'm going to show 3 different main core traps to the Sepulcher here. So this is essentially on floor 2. You can kind of see a timer in the top left that's work in progress. But this Firetrap, the idea with this is, as you can imagine, it blocks off. If you walk into it, it damages you. But more importantly, it's very predictable. So you see it's going in a set pattern. Very easy for this, but 3. So I can go through this if I get caught. So I'm going to stand here and get caught. You'll notice that I take damage and I'd have to restart the encounter, right? So the more times you get it right, the more times you save, the easier it'll be. So that's the Firetrap. The next one is what we call dodging projectiles coming towards you, which, as everyone pointed out, they're currently bots. we found a new home for all the bots that are plaguing the game. We've used them to start becoming obstacles for you guys in the Sepulcher. But realistically, I needed something that could show these projectiles.
So you went with the bot.
Well, I had a man in PC, and Mod Flippy thought it would be humorous to use the bot sort of layout. But similar,
But they're asking to keep it, so. I mean.
So, similarly, you get hit with this, you'll have a new checkpoint over here. So if I dodge this, these are actually, because I set this up earlier, they're spawning 2 at once instead of 1, which is my bad. But you'll notice that, on the Firetraps as well, there's supposed to be some sort of animation on the statues, which is placeholder right now, but the idea that, you have a slight tell. Glossing over what this is. This is an example of like a treasure opportunity. So you'll notice here there's some sort of magical barrier stolen from Castle Wars and a brazier here. No dev work implemented for this, but you can sort of see the other paths. Another path at some point will lead here. And the idea is that there's some sort of skilling activity to overcome here. So I've got here the skills that we're going to include are like magic, which would be creating a magical platform that so you have to enchant. Ranged is going to be like your grapples. Construction is going to be repairing a bridge. And prayer is going to be like sacrificing into the brazier in order to get past. All of these have a chance to fail. So based on your skill level, you obviously have a better chance. Some fail in different ways. But yeah, once you get past this, you go into there.
You're not allowed on the other team's starting room.
No, I'm not allowed in the other team's starting room. Moving down, we're trying to sort of play with verticality here, so I'll hop down to the next floor, where you'll see more of these Firetraps.
Oh, you're not on a toggle roof.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Every artist bay, nobody actually looks at the roofs in the game. So yeah, again, very simple things, just so I can showcase it on stream here, what the patterns are. But the other thing I want to point out as well is, for those of you in game know that when you run, you don't actually move like 2 squares. You never touch the middle square, you teleport. One of the challenges as a dev I wanted was to stop that. So if you notice when this next flame appears, if I try and run over it, it didn't work. So we're going to try and stop this sort of teleporting idea. So you actually have to stop and wait and figure out the patterns. So if I hop down here, to cheat and go to floor 3. Where am I? For some reason I'm on the other side. I think Mod Flippy's been messing around with this.
He flipped it.
He did, he flipped it, literally. So, again, more Firetraps, we've already covered those, but you'll see here there's a grapple obstacle. So you'd be able to grapple over to this central pillar where, surprise, there's another grapple on the other side for the other person. Oh, I forgot to mention, these paths are randomly chosen. So you can see on floor 3, I think there's 2. On floor 1 and 2, there's 4 different paths. We want there to be a bit of diversity, so you don't know which path is being selected for you ahead of time. It's random, but I think it ends up being there's 64 different path combinations across all 5 floors that you'll end up going on. So you won't have the same experience. That was the sort of trying to get past this lap, same lap. What the hell is up with the number of these? It's spawning 3 at once for some reason, which is literally unpassable, but we'll pass over that. Same with these boulders. This is why I shouldn't have set it up on 2. I ran the setup twice instead of teleporting there. So this is supposed to be 1 boulder going one way, and the idea is you have to time when you're going to run to get past it, or you get damaged close. But yeah, naturally, if you hit it, it will take you. It's supposed to be back there.
Oh, they give you the shortcut.
Yeah. It's still very much like we just wanted to have something to show you guys and not have it like bug free, essentially. You can see the projectiles again. Now this purple setup, let's just say, is another trap. It's not developed yet, but it's a spot like teaser for later. The idea is that because we have different types of traps, we can make combination traps, right? Where you have to deal with multiple things at once. So whatever that is, you'll have to deal with that while you're also dodging the army of projectiles, not bots. I'm gonna hop past this. Again, the boulder traps. You see, we're sort of trying to combo this and having to get through this. Already covered fire traps, but I'll just move on to the last trap of this floor that we had right now, which was both floors coming to this one penultimate run for, well, this, ultimate run, final obstacle for floor 3, which is not going to be this hard. You'd have about, like, I think there's about 3 times spawning as many as there should be because of the setup that we did. But the idea that you'll have to dodge this while going through the fire obstacles, we've made little safe spots for you as you get through, but that's that. But in the design, we have those 3 core traps you've seen. The boulder, which I think we're going to have thematically as a sword toss that's going to come back to the statue that threw it. You've got the projectiles, which are probably going to be arrows and not bots, sorry. And then the flames. So other thing as well is these flames are going to be all the way across. Right now, it doesn't look it because we don't have the animation yet.
Just a placeholder animation.
But that's where we are with that. Oh, the treasure opportunities I said as well. There was a mention in the blog with this. I thought I'd cover this. So the thing you get from the activity is hallowed marks, which look kind of like this. These are old Siren currency. And then these are the words you can buy, where there's the hallowed, the dark dye, the hallowed ring, which is essentially when you fail, you'll instead not lose time, and you charge that up with from the shop. The hammer helps the construction activity. The focus helps the magic one. The symbol helps with the prayer one, and then there is a grapple which is currently not colored properly yet, but it will help with the ranged one, along with the ring of endurance, which is obtained from the activity itself while raiding the chests. The squirrel is blocking it.
How rude.
And then the acorn itself, which will recolor the squirrel, which I can't show off right now, but that's the idea.
Just teasing.
Yeah. Cool. So that's sort of everything from there. If you want to see what these look like worn, this sort of will look like this.
It shows the greatest place to stand.
I know. I will go up.
There you go. You got.
There we go. They'll sort of look like that. Is where we've got.
Ooh, it goes well with the dark race as well.
Yeah. Fitting with the equipment you'll probably wear from this. That's that. Obviously, we've got a lot of grey box, a lot of unfinished, polished content, but Mod West did have a test square.
So this is mostly for just getting the graphics down and making sure it all renders how I'd like it to.
Oh, up one.
Yeah, you get it. And then you toggle the roof back on.
So
yeah.
That first concept image you saw, this is his sort of recreation of it, like recreation of it, but like what it could actually look like.
It'll be a bit grander in size because I did try to keep this into a smaller area than I needed to.
So you can see the idea is this labyrinth of pathways all sort of connecting to each other, various traps and obstacles. So
and there'll be more of those big central sections as well that sort of tie parts together, so there won't be quite as much void, but still a fair amount.
So this is what it looks like when an artist actually maps it down instead of a dev. Cool. Moving on from that, essentially the purpose of this stream of this part of the stream is to sort of gauge feedback from you guys, right? And to show you what we're working on and to find out if we're doing, like, essentially what you guys would like from this content. So the sort of questions I have for framing this feedback is, what do you guys think of the concept of interactive agility? Bear in mind all those projectiles you saw, there were far too many of them because I'd set that up wrong. But it will be a lot more straightforward than that to dodge, especially on the lower levels. The later levels are going to be really hard. Also, the thoughts on those 3 traps mechanically, the flames, the projectiles, and the idea of dodging the boulder that's going back and forth with the sword or whatever that ends up being. Do you like the idea of the combo traps? Do you think that's going to be too complicated? Do you think it makes it interesting? Thoughts on the penalty system and focusing on time instead of damage. So you'll notice, like, it was basically token damage. I took damage because it makes sense, right? To make you take damage from getting burned, but the idea is that you're not going to be suddenly getting hit for 20 in this place, or 30 or whatever. The idea behind sacrificing XP for loot and the risk versus reward in, do I take the next floor or do I essentially do I take the next floor or do I leave now and take what I've got? The idea of investing in the mini games, the hallowed marks, giving you guys the items that will help with the activity and will presumably help you get the loot quicker to save time. And then finally, just visually, how does it look? And I'm not talking necessarily about the grey box, but the thematics from the concept art. You know, the colours, the Sardominist sanctuary within Darkmire, and that sort of thing. So if you've got any feedback, we'll be keeping an eye on social media channels and stuff, but let us know. And yeah. Also, yeah, that's the Dark Graceful on the brightest setting. So for those of you saying it needs to be darker, that's sort of, that's the color you could expect on the different brightness settings. Cool. Anyway, that's it for us.
And Mods, Husky and Wesk will be joining us over here. We've got a few questions from the chat, which we could do with your help clarifying regarding the content we just showed off. And then we'll, clicker, thank you very much. And then we'll go through the normal questions.
Sure.
Just on the feedback bit at the end, you kind of reeled off quite a long list of questions that you want feedback on. And the chat responded very positively with a spam of yeah. So what we should do is kind of formalize and tell them again what feedback we're really looking to focus on and give them like a clear route and avenue to us.
Yeah.
Also worth noting as well that we've got potentially up to 2 different playtests around not just this content but other stuff too. And again, like I mentioned earlier with the PvP stuff, all the feedback we capture from those playtests will be shared with you at the player base as once the playtests are concluded, so you can see what we're showing off, what feedback we're getting, and then what we're doing to address the feedback.
I'll make a Reddit post when the stream's over, and I can tweet it out so you guys can, if you want, just sort of answer those questions and leave any other thoughts on it, because that's kind of why we're showing it, right? We think what we've got is great, and we want you guys to say either it is or it isn't, you know, and let us know early enough where we can make changes.
Yep, exclamation mark Darkmire to see the blog, see the poll questions we're proposing, and we'll start the poll when it's ready, when we've addressed your feedback points, adapted questions accordingly. Just a few questions on the content you showed off. I think I heard you answer it, but I might have mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get the pet squirrel from the activity?
Yes. One of the things I wanted to make sure was this is obviously going to give potentially really good XP if you're good at it and you're doing it consistently. It also has the opportunity for loot. So one thing we've decided internally, or I at least decided and spoke to people, they agree, we want it to be a lower pet chance than you'd expect, right? I think normally pets are ballpark 1 in 25 mil XP. And I was sort of looking for 1 in 35 mil, 40 mil-ish as a, before we get to any balancing and deciding what those calculations are, that's what I'm going in, looking at that. So you can get it, it's just going to be rarer because I kind of want to still leave the appeal of the other courses. If you want staminas, you've got rooftops, penguin, obviously still being the best for the pet and keep it in its place. So yeah.
Cool, another question from the chat. So Canadian Chief asks, will this be instanced or can you do it in groups?
It'll be instanced mechanically because it's easier for us to deal with all those things. But it'll be like sort of like, think like Tithe Farm is, right? Where you'll fill up the instance, then once it's full, it'll generate another one. So you'll still see probably 5 to 10 players sort of doing it around about the same time as what we are wanting to do. We'll have to play around and see, obviously, performance issues and how does it work and how does it feel.
But we do want you to see other players doing it. I think that's one of the great things of Pyramid Plunders, when you see the other guy who's going around at the same time as you. So, yeah, definitely want to have the MMO feel, I guess.
Cool, sounds good. Okay, so 2 questions. Could V's shield be made better than the Mire shield so we can save some bank space?
Oh, I'd love that. I find that the V shield got a bit, it's not as useful as the Mire shield in those terms, so it would be nice to make it a bit more of a best in slot item for Basilisk Knights when you fight them. So yeah,
someone in the chat asked which shield is that. So this is the shield you obtained during the Family Exiles quest. Okay, it makes sense as well.
Yeah, I might be biased though because I did make the shield.
Do you intend to buff the average drops from the Nightmare? After being there for a while, I've made a loss. Even if I don't get a unique, the top contributing player should at least break even or profit a little, says the player. Just a note, I almost misread that as the Nightmare Zone. I was like, did I need buffing from the Nightmare Zone? But anyway, back to the Nightmare. What are your thoughts on that?
There haven't been any plans to further buff it. From what I heard, at least the project team were fairly happy with where that sits right now. We do know you make a loss, but it still ends up being pretty good GP per hour when you hit those
When you
uniques.
get the unique, yeah.
So we're happy with that as it sits right now. Obviously, as time goes on, we can monitor it if things sort of go, either things drop in price, sort of that sort of thing. But we're pretty happy with it right now.
Okay.
Is it the most expensive boss to do at the moment, would you say?
I think it is if you use the Scythe. I think there's an element of, if you want faster kills, and people they're taking things like Sanguinesti and Scythe, but if you do it with say like a Toxic Trident, which is cheaper to run, or the Inquisitor's Mace obviously is a great, almost being close to Scythe, but even a Bludgeon does fairly well. Being an MVP is a 10% increase to the actual drop quantity of the things you get. So it's an element of do I fight for MVP? Obviously you're still getting a slightly better chance at the unique when it does roll, but your average drop isn't actually increasing that much for the cost of the Scythe. So,
cool. Can players be prevented from removing Aoife from weapons while in combat? Currently, people uncharge their crossbows and drop trade it to a low-level ult when losing a fight in the wilderness. That makes sense to me. We've done similar changes before when it comes to dropping stuff in the wilderness when you're about to die.
It's never good to grief other players from the loot, which they're killing you to get. So I think we should.
Next question. Could activities in Miscellanea for gaining favour, like chopping maple trees, provide full experience rather than a token amount?
Yeah, I agree with that. But there's probably a problem with just staying there to train indefinitely.
I think I don't like it, because I like the thematic that you are their ruler and their king, and you're gaining their loyalty by giving up.
Well, you're giving up the maple logs or whatever, right? But it's weird, the idea of you giving up the experience that you've gained or whatever you've learned as a woodcutter as well. I think it'd be a nice one to do, actually.
Players have pointed out that you can't keep chopping after you hit 100%.
Oh yeah, well,
true.
Yeah, that's true. Why was it even reduced to begin with?
I imagine it's just a legacy thing from when it was first added, because they didn't want people to train there, perhaps.
Potentially.
But now that there are different methods.
It's not like maple trees are a rare tree that you don't find in large quantities anywhere else. So I think it's fine.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cool. Okay, moving on. Could accept aid receive a toggle that restricts it to players on your friends list?
I don't think we can do that until we get clans. We don't have a way to remember the player's ID on your friends list. Obviously, we can look it up when they're online, but there wouldn't be a trigger for us to necessarily do that, because obviously any code that we write has to have a trigger. So yeah, once we have a clan system, we could probably look to start doing that, because you'll start to have things like permanent player IDs and stuff.
That sounds great. Next question. I'm getting through these ones nice and quick. Are there any plans to buff the Hydra tail? Its price is currently propped up by its alc value.
I did hear quite a cool suggestion to do with heads and tails, to use the heads as well. Give someone with that. But, I don't know, it's sort of the whole point of it is to be used for that single unique, right? If anything, we should probably address the unique in question if it's not worth anything. Yeah,
I mean, what do you guys feel? I mean, as far as the unique, is it a case of just you would use it if it had the stats of a Glory or a Fury? I mean, would that help? I mean, obviously it would help the price of the tail, but because that's the problem, right? We wouldn't want, maybe don't give the tail another use, but fix the problem with the thing it's making, because that's also fairly cheap.
I would agree with that. The only thing is, we've said before, the Hydra is already pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. I mean, I think having an item that's maybe very underused for the tier it's at is probably a bigger issue than that. But
yeah, I agree. We don't need to make Hydra better money, but it is a problem of the item that it drops just being virtually useless.
You don't want a unique drop from a boss where you feel bad because it's like the worst one. Whereas
I could have rolled something else.
By like a big margin, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is worth saying, I think the way that drop table is coded is you don't actually hit that until you've failed on the claw. It tries to roll the better uniques first and it goes down like rolling them. I think that's how it works. I'd have to double check, but at least from the infographic that was released, that's what it looked like at the time. I checked it myself, but so you're technically not losing it, but it still feels bad to hit a 1 in 512, and I think it's 1 in 512, and it's worth next to nothing.
Okay. Will tier 75 ranged armor be created to match Justiciar and Ancestral? Perhaps this could come from raids 3. So what I'd like to say on this question, and then also the question we asked previously about Hydra Tail, is that we're quite keen internally on doing some sort of equipment rebalancing or tier rebalancing. So I don't think we should just add ranged armor at tier 75 because equivalent levels exist. I think we should only look to introduce new equipment when there's a need to introduce new equipment. And I think with Void and Armadillo, I don't quite think we need a new range set.
Ranged already feels very strong, and it has for years. I think obviously some of the changes we made recently, like obviously the harmonized staff helping magic DPS has been a buff to help magic. The scythe being introduced has obviously helped melee. Yeah, I think for any sort of armor it would require content of that caliber to be worth introducing a new tier to ranged armor like Raids 3 or something like that, but there aren't any plans to currently.
Perhaps if we nerf Blowpipe or Twisted Bow, maybe, then there's a room for better armor.
Yeah, because we've always had problems just trying to update, get a best in slot range glove slot, which has always been a task. Getting a full armor set is going to be even hard to get through the polls.
Okay, next question. Could we see the Siren's Tome come back as a future reward?
So I guess that it makes sense, I guess, for me to answer that one. It was originally a design that I'd come up with, and ultimately the community pointed out, right, I failed to acknowledge the arcane was really the problem, right, and what impact that would have on an iconic thing. And the best part about that is we got so many more great ideas about what if eventually something in the future had an upgrade to all the spirit shields, right? And then we could have something that maybe had the arcane as a base or something else. We could look at that in the future. I saw all sorts of concept art around about that time, like dark spirit shields, you know, that sort of thematic. But I think the best part is that, like, yes, magic offhand is something that could be used, you know, to add magic damage to help magic keep up with the other ones. But I think we definitely would want to go about it the right way. Perhaps the model for the Siren's Tome could be used for something else in the future, but not with its current sort of stats. If people liked the model, it could even be a cosmetic thing, I guess. But yeah.
I did really like the look of the dark spirit shields that players mocked up in response to the tome, so I'd be quite keen.
They were quite cool.
If there's room for the item and it having a use, then sure, we can introduce a cool looking shield, I think. Has Mod West been working on more Zaya house reworks? If so, are the team planning to add the content soon?
I have, and I have also prepared something.
So
ooh. If we get the first image.
Do you want to see the slides now? Yeah. Okay, there we are.
So this is Shazian currently, as it is. And over the past few months, I've sort of been working at doing what I did with the Hesidious rework, but to the other houses. I did start initially with Arceus, and then start from scratch. And I did like Levicain, and then I started doing Shazian, and I just sort of enjoyed it a lot more. So I figured it was a better place to start. So if we go to the next one, this is sort of the plan. This isn't anything in game. This is all through Photoshop. So this is sort of what I sort of want Shazian to look like. So as you can see, I've sort of split the town into sort of two sections. We've got the northern battlefront part, and then the actual city itself. The problem I always had with Shazian was that it sort of lacked history. It was all just tents. I mean, they look really nice. It's just there's no ruins, or apparently they've been here for about 1,000 years, so it makes sense for them to have some past. So as you can see around the outside.
At least huts.
Yeah, at least huts, yeah. So the other outside, I've got to the south there's like a ruin, and there's just other ones just dotted around the forest, which sort of just give it a bit more character, essentially. I've tried to keep the content the same, but fortunately there's not really much stuff that's sort of stuck inside Shazian, not like the library is for Arceus, so that'd be a very difficult thing to move from a code perspective. So I've sort of kept things in the same area. Certain things have moved. Obviously, the whole city itself has moved a fair bit south. The giants are all in the same place. I've just sort of worked the environment around them. And as you can see, there's also some dungeons to the side. So what this is sort of getting into is the idea of back in, when was it, 2017, April, we sort of broke up Neve's Cave into a bunch of smaller caves. This was seen as a lot more interesting way to do Slayer, because you go to a bunch of different locations rather than just the same one. And the Catacombs has the same problem. So this isn't the whole Catacomb split up, this is just 2 sections of it. You see the other ones in other houses in the future. But this is just sort of taking the giants out of the Catacombs and putting them in their own little dungeon. It's made sense to put them near the giants in Shazian, and then sort of shrinking the Catacombs down itself, and then just keeping just the relevant mobs. The ones that you don't see there will be in other dungeons. We're not completely removing them. If anything, we'll probably add a few more places to train, so it's a little less cramped. So yeah, that's just the general idea of the Shazian house redesign.
I'll do another quick, as it is currently,
yep,
and to what it could become.
Boom.
Looks fantastic. I think it makes a lot more sense as well. I mean, if you look at where they're living, it's so close to the battlefield.
Yeah, it is.
You never feel safe.
They're also
it makes quite a lot of sense.
Just massive, massive tents at the moment, like huge.
Yeah,
I like that. You know, like they've been here for like 1,000 years or something like that, and they're looking at their brothers in the other houses. Like, when can we develop this stone technology?
those guys are immortal over there. We're still living in tents.
Also,
Yeah.
like removing a lot of the older, some of the areas that were just sort of unused. If you go back to the first image, you can see how large the graveyard is. It just doesn't really need to be that big, right? So yeah, just sort of trimming off some places and just giving it a bit more character.
Fewer buried dead people.
Yeah, right. Well, they've got an entire crypt system beneath, so it should be fine.
Play fires in the battlefield to throw them in, I guess. Don't need to bury them.
Wow.
I think you'll find the lizardmen actually ate them.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Do they?
I don't know.
I don't know. We've never really explored that.
Headcanon.
But yeah, essentially a lot of this was helped by the Twisted League. I had a good amount of time running around Zaya in ways I'd never really done it before, and so would a lot of players as well. So that really helped figure out what I needed to keep the same. So hopefully a lot of the all the teleport locations are essentially the same, and I just sort of changed the way you flow around the area. I think the most important part is between the canyon and the castle itself, but that was completely blocked before, and it was just kind of redundant, really. So just opening up the space a lot more felt a bit nicer.
That is great. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
And thank you, Mod John. Next question. Why is it that Castle Wars bracelets and Rings of Forging are now free-to-play items, but cannot be enchanted in free-to-play? Was that a conscious decision? I believe we made that change in 2017, perhaps? 2018, around that time?
Did we poll making them free to play at the same time? I don't
We
know.
did, yeah.
And then I guess it failed. So
Oh, wait, no, sorry.
You can make them free to play, you just can't enchant.
I don't know if
Sorry.
we polled enchanting.
I mean, there is a precedent in game for it. I don't know if we made it.
I thought you could enchant them, but by speaking to an NPC, who'll do it for you. Or did we never implement that?
Maybe we spoke about it. But you can make like you can use maple stuff in free to play, for example, and you can't obviously get it anywhere in free to play.
We can get maple now.
Oh, can you?
Yes, in the...
We did that. We did maple logs. You just can't fetch them.
Oh yeah,
So-
yeah, you can't fetch.
We need to find out.
Why?
Is the answer I've got.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The NPC in the Grand Exchange, there's someone there who'll enchant them for you. I think the question is specifically, why can't we do it from our own spellbook as a free player?
I don't have any problems with it. It seems like a harmless thing to put on a poll, you know, just and
I assume there would have been some reason, though. Otherwise, why would we put that function on an NPC? But I don't know what that reason would have been.
I think it's just hesitancy around giving anything to free to play. But
Booty Surge thinks it could be because of the magic XP per hour in free-to-play. And we know there's quite a dedicated free-to-play community. And when you change XP rates, things get a little bit messy.
yeah. They don't want it.
Yeah. Well,
Could be that.
let's find out. Okay, the next question. Could we see some quality of life updates to the GE interface? A countdown timer on buy offers every 4 hours, a pause button on buy sell offers that lets us pause the buy sell offer, and being able to adjust the offers without cancelling the offer outright. I know the last one we've asked quite a few times.
I think I remember the answer Ash gave a while ago. It's the way the GE setup is because it's handled separately from the main game, and us as content developers don't have much hands-on with how that's handled. So I think it'd be something that's out of our hands in terms of if you can adjust your value rather than taking it off and then pulling it back up again. It's just the way the system works at the moment.
Some interface stuff might be possible. So then one of the other questions I've got in the document, I'll skip ahead for this one because it's quite relevant. Would you consider reworking the GE to have an easier way of relisting a buy order? It's annoying having to research for an item I want to buy multiple times. Could you potentially include like a last item option in the search field?
I think we spoke about that recently, didn't we?
We did. It was the Unknown team that was going through sort of general improvements for the game, and this suggestion came up. The tricky thing is because the Grand Exchange interface is already quite crowded. It's a very busy interface, and you know where everything is, and you're used to it. It's a case of what's the best way to implement something like this. I think what we settled on, I don't know if we're polling it. It's not in poll 70, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay, great. I think the idea is the area that you type in to search for the item you want to buy, that will appear as default filled in by the last thing that you bought, so that you can quickly rebuy something that you've
I think
already
it'll be a
purchased.
bit like clan chat. So if you enter a clan chat, it remembers the last one you went into, something like that.
Yeah, so when you enter the text
Yeah,
to search,
it'll
it'll
be
appear.
just above it or something like that.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, we'll be polling that soon.
Yep. Some players pointing out that the history tab exists for that reason, but this is about making it a bit more usable without having to resort to the history tab.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Quite an open-ended one here. Sorry, I messed my notes up a little bit. Will there be time dedicated to skilling, making it profitable / worth it? I think a very big question because, I mean, we've showed off the Hallowed Sepulchre. That's a skilling update.
Yeah.
I think if I look at what the player's asking about profitability, I think it might be kind of resources and the use of resources and how, probably more to do with how skilling relates to PVMing.
Yeah. I remember a design a few years ago about this thing called skilling beans, where you sort of use an item that would be dropped from like a boss instead of just pure resource, which you then use to gather resources a lot quicker. I believe they might have done something similar with RuneScape.
So Gentle Tractor pitched skilling catalysts, and then I think RuneScape 3 released, I want to say Spirit Shards or Stone Spirits or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I'm not quite. Honestly, I don't really know much about that piece of content. It might be worth us learning from there.
Yeah, potentially.
How
Probably something to learn from.
It's one of the things where it's safer to do things like that with activities, say, things like, for example, aerial fishing was good money. I know it's not, but activities of that nature, which are maybe more click intensive, or things like the Hallowed Sepulchre, when you've got good money makers that require little to no effort, they're probably going to be botted to the extent that they're not worth it. And even though we do obviously catch these people and ban them, they'll make them just as quickly and redo it.
Even bots aside, if content's like easy, say there's like loads of barriers to access, like Quest or whatever, but the activity itself is quite low effort or AFK, people will make alts to do it and just drive those prices down.
Yeah.
And
Dragons, for example, right?
Yeah.
They're fairly AFK. They're pretty good money. They're a lot behind requirements, but if we had a skilling equivalent, it would just be the same.
And then the buyable skills will always be tricky to make profitable, just because you can get loads of XP in those, and people who are trying to hunt down the 200 mil in those skills will always make it not profitable because they're constantly buying the resources. I can see a future where resources are a bit more valuable, but yeah, only in cases like you say where they take a bit more effort to actually acquire.
I would be interested to see if there are other things we can do with skills similar to the Sepulchre. I don't mean in case of that sort of level of interaction, but at least in the sort of element of XP versus profit could be quite interesting to see if we could do more with, okay, I know I'm doing this in a slightly different way to obviously get more money.
Okay, so player asked, what do we time dedicated to skilling? There already is, but if we look at the question about profitability versus PVM, I think we are open to tweaking that, so it's not all resources and all profit comes from PVM only. Perhaps we can look at making skilling more profitable whilst you're training. So somebody said like high level methods need to be profitable. I'd agree if they're quite interactive. So like look at Redwoods, for example, the XP you get and the AFK ability of that. I don't think it needs to be quite profitable. I think you have to balance how interactive it is versus how profitable. Okay, next question. Could we receive a timer and a personal best notice for Skatizo, similar to what is present at many other bosses and activities? Obviously, I don't think this could be retroactive, but it'd be nice to see, even if people just want to track the average kill times.
Well, it definitely wouldn't be retroactive. It never is, right? When we add something like that.
If we're not tracking it currently for that person, we can't do it. They're fairly straightforward to add. There's obviously QA time and other things, but if players want it, and obviously we could poll it, I don't see why not.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. So I've quite a few messages about PvP in the chat. That was one of the first announcements we covered at the start of the stream, so you could go back. Or I will also cover announcements at the end of the stream as well. So if you hold tight for another 15 minutes or so, I'll talk about it then. Next question, could we see some sort of blog or website post published after the weekly Q&A to allow people who cannot see it live and perhaps do not have enough time to watch the entire VOD? So I want to say that sounds like a very intensive transcript. I believe it's player Maxi posted it on Reddit quite often. Yeah. I think we could probably do more to signpost to that and obviously shout out the great work that Maxi's doing, so thank you very much. But also going forward, we'll be getting the VOD onto YouTube in a much more reasonable time frame, timestamping it, as well as creating a summary video, so perhaps a short 2 to 4 minute video covering any big issues that we raise. So I wouldn't expect to see that, like a blog, appear on a website post Q&A, but I think we can do more signposting to someone like Maxi doing great work, or just creating summary videos, summary content. Next question. It's question 21. What are your thoughts on a tap to alch / tap to superheat mode as a quality of life update for mobile, similar to the tap to drop feature?
So you could just continually tap to alch, or
yeah, I guess it would. In your configure your tap to drop, you would say tap to alch, and you just sit there in your inventory like this.
Isn't that a massive buff to?
Yeah. And okay. Quite dangerous as well. Because I mean, I've quite dropped something by accident quite a lot. Imagine, well, I suppose you got the price limit on that, yeah. But
so if you turn that off, you drop it, you just pick it back up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, accidentally tapping to drop isn't as bad as accidentally alching, right?
Yeah. I wonder if there was a conscious decision to prevent that with the idea that the spellbook's on one side of the mobile interface and the inventory's on the other one.
I think that is deliberately the case, for that exact reason.
So I asked this question because I expected it to be a no, but also because I think we've got some good advice to impart, which would be if you use the spellbook filters on mobile, you could, by turning off combat, turning off teleport, and refining your options to do with runes and level, you could make the alch button nice and big so it's super easy to click. So it wouldn't be removing like a click, but it makes it easier to do.
Yeah, you should do the same for the inventory, so that you have a huge pile of magic longbows on one side and your alch and you can't miss. It's a joke, chat, by the way.
Okay. Well, John, if we could have the slide up again. What do you think of this proposal for changing how scouting in the Chambers of Xeric could work? So, slide 1 is a player basically talking about Chambers of Xeric, talking about what scouting is and how we should fix it. So if everybody squint and reads it.
Get my magnifying glasses out.
I was speaking to Gambit a bit about this beforehand. I think if on the next...
lovely.
Oh, brilliant. So once we get there, I think on the next slide there's an idea for like the player can obviously generate their own raid to the exact layout and exact type of room.
There it is. These are free solutions the player has posited.
That would be very hard to do dev-wise. And very tedious as well. It's just something that if we went this route, one option we could do is say, hey, speedrunning community, what is the perfect layout? And we make you get that layout for a fee. That could be something that would be more viable, like time-wise, for us to do.
So that's like a mix. So the players suggested solution 2 was to do with paying a fee for a specific route.
Yeah.
And solution 3 is like a record mode, which is you get no loot, but there's a speed run layout. So it's almost like merging 2 and 3.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of saying you pay for a scout, and then that's a speed run. Because I think scout specific layouts go for like 4 mil to 5 mil, or something like that. And players are just doing it to try and best their own times, and obviously they would like to be able to do that for an entire evening. Gambit,
I think you added a chat command for players to read this on their own.
I did, yeah. If you want to check this out in your own time, !scouting will take you to this image, so you can go through it, have a read through, and sort of inform your own opinion.
Cool.
Even if you don't agree with these specific solutions, I know that scouting is a big thing, and I think ideally we would change it so that it's not so much of a thing.
Yeah. So before I came down, I spoke to Mod Kieran, who couldn't attend this week's Q&A. He quite likes the ideas, the solutions. Similar to you, thinks we could probably mock up perhaps something somewhat between solution 2 and solution 3 to try and find the ideal outcome.
I think as long as it doesn't give you any things like pet chances, loot, even the normal drop table, I think it's fine to offer that. And I've heard not many people, obviously very few people do it, but people wanting to force fake Slayer tasks for like Inferno,
Right.
where they don't get any XP for the run, and they'd still have to wear a Slayer helm, but essentially they wouldn't have to do Slayer and keep skipping tasks to try and beat the records. And obviously it wouldn't give you pet and cape and stuff like that, but just for people to do that. So I've heard all sorts of suggestions for speedrunning for us to do things that would help that. Obviously you'd only be able to do it if you've done it, so it's not free practice on Slayer task. But
Okay, let's move on. Would you consider adding a POH portal to Dark Mire, since we do not have one currently in Mauritania?
It was a good opportunity. But I mean, we just added a health support with Priv, didn't we? It wasn't that long ago. I don't know.
Where would we put it if we were to do it?
Darkmire's pretty full right now. I'm sure we could make space.
Yeah, I'm sure Rye wouldn't mind making a little space for it.
If we put it in sleep, that would help the Nightmare a lot, but we also are fairly okay with the
Well, we deliberately made it so that you couldn't just
we want that long
teleport to your house and back for the Nightmare.
Yeah.
Maybe Canifis.
Okay, we'll just take a look to see if there's any way that fits with it in Mauritania, and whether or not we actually want to go ahead with that. Next question. Could the Gauntlet become an alternative for Elf Slayer tasks? So you're not quite slaying elves, but I imagine what the player is thinking of here is, I guess, similar to the message you get when you have the Jad task. Like you can kill elves, or perhaps you want to do a Gauntlet run.
Or we could be very evil and just make Crystal Beasts a Slayer task.
Maybe make it unlockable via the Slayer shop so people don't get it if they don't want it.
I don't know if this particular change is necessary, but I do know that we intend to make elves a bit better. I know we removed the ability to cannon them, but we've got a change sort of prepared to reintroduce that. I think it was removed with the around the time of Song of the Elves when we took them out of the Mourner HQ. But I think we're fixing that, so just sort of sit tight if that's the reason you would like a better method for them.
I think if anything, I would rather have an unlock to add Gauntlet, Corrupted Gauntlet to the boss task list. Could be a way. It's weird though, because you just wouldn't get your Slayer Helm bonus, right? Because you don't take any of your gear in there, so I think that one would be better than just making elves convert.
Okay, next question. Why don't Adamant Dragons have a damage-reducing item for their green splash attacks, whilst insulated boots work for the Rune Dragon equivalent?
I suppose it wasn't decided at the time.
No, we didn't think about it, I guess. It's the short answer. Should it have one, I guess, is the real question.
I mean, you can just drink antidotes to basically nullify that damage anyway, right?
Yeah. I suppose that is technically the way around it. Yeah.
Okay.
Or a Serp Helm.
Looks like the chat are experiencing some audio issues. Are we picking anything up at all?
It's just a bit rustling.
Okay.
It might be me. I will try to be more still with my precariously clipped microphone.
Okay, so when new items are released, is the criteria to allow POH storage? For example, why can Bandos or Armadillo not be stored, whilst Ancestral and Justicer can? Are mining gloves something that we can store in the armor case?
I mean, yeah, I suppose nowadays when we release something, we make sure it's storable. But in the past, not so much. But yeah, whether they want it in there or not.
I think we're just very conscious right now of the bank space issues.
Yeah.
Maybe back then in the day, the devs, it obviously wasn't as big an issue. But we know players ask for more bank space. We know we can't provide on that for technical reasons with the bank. Having, I think it was load times is what Ash has said. It would be really, it would essentially put a lot of strain on the banks to do that. So, yeah, we do that to try and make things storable from now on. We could potentially poll if people want to store their Bandos and Armadillo. It would be a pretty big buff to Ultimate Ironman though.
Definitely.
You know,
What I've always said to that is, if you're at that point in UIM, maybe it's justified.
it is. It's just always a consideration. Like if it helps a lot of genuine players, then obviously it's just they have to live with that.
Okay, next question. Sorry.
Just need to be polled, I guess.
Yeah.
Next question. Could previous names be added to the clan tab, similar to how they show up for friends or ignored players? So this is when you're looking at the clan tab, you're looking at the people who are sitting in the friends chat and having the previous name appear.
I think have to take a look at how the friends list handles it and see if it's possible to do on the clans. I don't think anyone here has had a look at the friends list or...
Don't actually know how the clan system currently works. I don't know what information it has, but I'd imagine if we have that information for the friends list, it should be possible to do that. Yeah, don't know.
It sounds like a nice request. If something we can either do with the friends chat currently, or perhaps when the clan system arrives, it will fit nicely along that.
Yeah, it's just hard to know without looking at it if there's a technical blocker that we don't realise. But it does sound like a cool idea.
Could we get the stats for the Twisted League reward shop purchases? How many of each were purchased? So what I say in this is that, so on Friday's data stream, we gave some Twisted League stats, but we opted specifically not to share the number of items that were purchased, just because we don't want to affect market prices. I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future, at least. I'll go for the last question before we run through the announcements again. Will the True Blood altar ever be added to Mauritania?
What is that?
So
like True Blood. Oh, the True Runecrafting. Oh,
not like True Blood, the show, but more like
the
real Blood altar.
We could pay homage to that show if we want.
Right now, the one on Zaya, it says it takes power from the Blood altar, but it's not a real Blood altar.
So there is a dungeon. So the Blood altar in RuneScape is in a dungeon that's sort of tied to a future vampire quest that we don't have. However, we are currently working on a vampire quest, so I suppose you'll have to wait and see.
Okay, wait and see.
Was that a real life podcast?
Flip it. Some questions from the chat quickly before we wrap up with announcements. So Paranice, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, asks, is there any news on the new clan system or group Ironman? No real new news. The engine work is being done for it, and then once that's completed, we'll hand over the content, and then we can make the content happen. Then we can release the content, and you can play the content. We don't have a date in mind just yet. I think what we've learned from things like Chaos Lowlands and Mobile and our intentions for Twisted League to kind of announce it early but didn't quite pay off is that it's probably best to wait until we've got a clearer mind. We hit certain milestones before giving you a release date.
Yeah. I think ultimately we also just want it in our control.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But it is being worked on. You know.
It sure is. We are really excited to work on it and release it. It's something that I think Old School, if that had it at launch, that would have been amazing. Just, one more question from the chat before we move on to announcements. I already asked that one from the Hallowed Sepulchre. Bragger Lagger asks, can Kriara be made to drop an amount of feathers that better reflects his majestic plumage? What end of a nice question.
How many does the Kree drop at the moment?
How many feathers does he have?
A lot of his feathers are armoured as well.
Sure. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to say sure, why not?
We'll break the immersion and just make him drop a feather pack. You know?
Well, surely his feathers would be much bigger than the ones you get from chickens. So,
giant arrows.
Yeah.
Some future content. You got a giant bow, make your giant arrows now, you know.
Okay, that's it for the questions. I'll run through the announcements and then we'll say a goodbye to Mod Gambit. So we covered these at the start of the stream, but I'll go through them again just in case you missed that. So in terms of high scores, still no new development, I'm afraid. We have tried a few different things to try and fix it. They didn't work, so we're going to try more things to try and fix it. We are working on it. We know it's a bother, particularly when it comes to things like clan competitions or even just checking up on your progress. It is the result of some very old tech. We are working on it and we'll fix it as soon as we can. In terms of PvP, so there's lots of things being spouted about how February was PvP month. We haven't kind of explicitly said that. We never had the intention of developing new PvP content for February. Instead, what we were going to do was use like lots of different design days just to kind of align on a vision, align on different ideas of content. The good news is that we've actually made quite a lot of progress with that vision. We've shared it with about 20 or 30 players so far. We've got a lot of feedback. We're addressing that feedback. We'll tweak the vision accordingly. Then we'll share it with a wider group of players, do the same round again, feedback changes, and then we'll go to you, like the entire player base. We're not quite ready yet. We need to flesh out the vision a bit more, build a content roadmap as well. But we're working on it and we'll share it when we can. That will also include stuff like competitive gaming and Deadman fitting within that vision. Yeah,
we don't just want a band-aid piece of content in 1 month and then say, okay, you got it, and move on to other stuff, you know? I think this, from what I've seen and from what players have said, looking very promising.
I think that's what we've done for the last few years, really. It's just like, okay, what quick wins, or what we think are quick wins, could we do to, like I said, band-aid fix? Whereas we want to do something a lot more holistic and more cohesive than that. Give you an idea of what to expect and when. Next announcement, death mechanics. So there's an in-game poll live right now. This is to capture your opinion on how we should proceed with death mechanic changes. So this is, I guess, an opinion poll of sorts, isn't it? We're asking players to choose their preferred option, and then we'll take that in mind when it comes to designing the final piece of content that we'll implement. Just a reminder, you don't need to go to a poll booth. You can open the account management menu, click the community tab and vote from there. !death to see the updated version of a blog. And I think that's it for the announcements we really need to cover. So Mod Gambit, leaving us on Friday, your last day.
Yep, quite right. 2 days to go.
Any highlights you've had from working the time in the Old School team?
Oh man, I know it's like a cliche, but my whole time here has been a highlight. It's been a lot of fun. I think the streams especially have been great. I think I usually used to laugh about me being so quiet and silent like on the first couple. I was just terrified. It was not even terrified, but not sure what to say. It was a very novel experience, just being on camera in front of with all of you guys. But I feel like I sort of came into my own, especially after hosting a couple times. I started to settle into it, and that's been quite something. And then other than that, yeah, just generally being able to share everything sort of between, you guys and the dev team's been fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time with the Old School team. This is strange to be losing you, but very exciting adventures ahead of you.
Yeah.
So make sure your Twitter account will be active, so you can follow Gambit's adventures when he leaves. I think that just about wraps it up. Anyone got anything else to add?
Gonna miss you.
Oh,
that's nice.
I guess I'll just re-say what I said is that I'm going to make a Reddit thread for Hallowed Sepulchre feedback, so keep an eye on that. I'll tweet it out from my Twitter account. So,
cool, sounds good. Right, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.